There is a legend about a movie called Heartbeat in the Brain. The movie was made by a grad student in London in the 60s who was deeply involved in the occult. It was featured in the book Apocalypse Culture. At any rate, this grad student, a woman, actually made a film of her trepanation. That is, she drilled a hole in the top of her head so she could see God. They say the film doesn't exist anymore. They say all copies disappeared after it was screened to shocked audiences at a film festival. I don't know. I've only seen purported bits and pieces of it. Anyway, the story I have to tell is about someone who drilled a hole in their head clean through to their brain. Because they swore they heard a heartbeat, a telltale heart, pounding away in their skull, and that it was driving them mad. But I'm getting ahead of myself. A woman that was dying of cancer heard about a new treatment south of the border, something that wasn't legal in the U.S. In desperation, she went down there and was unenthused when she realized she'd stumbled into the filthy hacienda of a psychic surgeon, a person who reportedly could heal terminal illness with psychic powers and rusty scissors. She was dubious about the whole thing, but deciding she had come too far to turn back, she let the man do his stuff. He made her lie down on a table and, making some strange passes over her and uttering weird incantation-like phrases in Spanish, he put his fingers on her forehead and, seeming to dig into her very scalp, began to retrieve the tumor. She could feel a cold, wet feeling, like pouring blood and fluid course down her cheeks. But there was no pain. Finally, the surgeon stepped back from the table and held up a dripping lump of gray matter that looked like a little slab of beef liver. "Here is your tumor," he said simply. "Now you will live." He stepped forward, his fingers going to her forehead again to seal up the wound, and then she was directed to get up. She did so, carefully cleaning the blood, which she secretly thought might actually be chicken's blood, off of her forehead with a rag. She left Mexico and, upon returning stateside, wasted no time in seeking out a doctor to see if, indeed, her tumor was really gone. To her shock and amazement, the doctor gave her a clean bill of health, adding that it must have been a miracle. The woman, overjoyed at the news, for she had been told she had only a short time to live, wept tears of gratitude and vowed never to doubt the powers of the occult again. But, unfortunately for this woman, her story most decidedly did not have a happy ending. You've heard of the hum, right? That sound that some people claim they can hear that nobody else can hear. I haven't actually heard anyone talk about it for years, but scientists theorized it had something to do with ultra-low frequency tests carried out by the U.S. military. Skeptics predictably claimed it was all hokum. At any rate, the woman began to hear a weird thumping sound. It was tiny at first, like the ticking of a clock. "It's like the beating of a baby's heart, in my head," she told her husband. It seemed to make the top of her head throb. Soon, she could hear it all the time. It grew louder and louder. She tried taking painkillers for the headache. It only helped a little. She tried stuffing cotton in her ears, wrapping wet towels around her head, and tying pillows to her, but the beating of the heart persisted. She started drinking. Her eyes became red, bleary. She was always pale, and she thought she might be losing her mind. That was when she started clawing at the thumping drumbeat in the top of her head, at first with her fingers, ripping out chunks of her hair, then with a pick, finally with a pair of scissors. One day her husband came in and found her crouched in a corner, sobbing and clawing at her bloody, barren scalp, screaming and gnashing her teeth and ripping at the flesh of her head. Chunks of skin and locks of hair clung to her bloody fingers as she cried, "It's in there! Oh, dear God, help me, it's in there! It's beating, clawing, desperate to get out, to be born!" He called an ambulance. She was heavily sedated. It was only a matter of time before she was confined to a sanitarium, in a padded cell, where she continued to pound her head, insensible, tortured, driven to agony, her eyes twin pits of suffering, her mouth hanging open, dripping saliva and blood where she bit her tongue and gnashed her teeth. Exploratory surgery found nothing that could account for it. Finally, the woman died. An autopsy revealed a hitherto undiscovered mass. It was of an unusual nature. Doctors swore it seemed to be made of fetal tissue. It was shaped like a tiny, sleeping infant. Like Pallas Athena was born from the cranium of Zeus, was this it waiting to be born from the woman's head? How will we ever know? Her body was cremated. The incident was swept under the rug, forgotten by all but a few.